I'm 21, and up until Thanksgiving dinner last year, I thought I just got the short end of the stick in life. You know the type. Student loans piling up like a game of Jenga, part-time job at the campus coffee shop, duct-taped sneakers, microwaved noodles 5 days a week. I wasn't bitter. Not really. I figured life was just tough and my parents did what they could. I never expected anything handed to me. But that night, rewrote everything I thought I knew about my family. And it started with one sentence from my grandpa. Thanksgiving has always been a bit of a circus in our family. My mom's side is loud, dramatic, and allergic to minding their own business. But this year, it was my dad's side hosting in Denver, which usually meant things stayed calmer, more polite. Grandpa always carved the turkey like it was a ritual, and Grandma passed around her famous cornbread while pretending not to notice my cousin's sneaking extra helpings. It was normal. I was home from college for the weekend, already dreading the midterms waiting for me when I got back. I remember sitting next to my little cousin Riley, who was too distracted by his mashed potatoes to talk much. My parents were across the table chatting with my uncle and aunt, like everything was fine, like they hadn't ignored most of my texts that semester. We were halfway through dinner when Grandpa raised his glass in a toast, something he only did when he was in a particularly sentimental mood. "To family," he said, voice shaky, but warm, "and to seeing our kids grow into something we can be proud of." People murmured their agreements, clinked glasses. Then he looked right at me and said it. "And Ethan, glad to see you're putting the college fund to good use." Everything around me paused. Forks froze midair. My heart thudded once, then again. Faster. I blinked. "What fund?" That's when I saw it. My dad choked on his drink, spluttering into his napkin. My mom's face drained of color so fast it was like someone pulled the plug. My aunt's eyes darted toward them, and even Riley stopped chewing. Grandpa frowned. "The college fund we set up when you were born. You didn't know?" And then, like a nail driven into the silence, Riley, sweet, oblivious little Riley, looked up at me and whispered, "Wait, you didn't know?" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. It felt like someone had punched me in the gut. I turned slowly to my parents, but neither of them met my eyes. My mom picked at her peas like they were suddenly fascinating. My dad reached for his wine glass again. "Ethan," Grandpa said, clearly confused, "hasn't the fund been helping with your tuition? We've been putting money in it for years. Every birthday, every Christmas, even when things got tight." I swallowed hard. "No one ever told me about a fund," I said, quieter than I expected. At that, Grandma's lips parted like she wanted to speak, but didn't know where to start. Aunt Karen leaned in slightly, eyebrows raised, her fork resting on her plate. "Wait, so who's been managing it?" That was when things started to unravel. My dad cleared his throat. We didn't think he needed to know," he said, eyes still on his plate. "You didn't think I needed to know I had a college fund?" My voice cracked on the word had. "We used it," my mom said quickly, her voice tight. "For the house and bills and emergencies. We thought it was best." Grandpa's face turned from confusion to something else, something cold. "What do you mean you used it?" My dad shot him a look, then turned to me. "Ethan, we were struggling. The recession hit hard. The roof was leaking, and your brother needed braces." "My brother?" I snapped, cutting him off. "The one who didn't even go to college?" "It was all for the family," my mom said, her voice rising. "You wouldn't understand. You were just a kid.
You wouldn't remember how bad it got. I stood up. My chair screeched against the floor.
Every eye at the table was on me. You could have told me. You let me take out loans. You let me work 20 hours a week on top of classes. I thought we just didn't have the money. I thought I was doing the right thing, working hard, not asking for help. And the whole time you were sitting on my college fund. It wasn't like that, my dad said, but he didn't sound convinced. You're making this a scene. I laughed, bitter, sharp. Oh, I'm making a scene. You lied to me for years, and I'm the problem. Grandpa turned to them, his voice quiet but firm. That money was never meant for you two. It was Ethan's. We made that clear. Well, maybe if you hadn't insisted on putting it in our names, my mom began. But she stopped when she saw the look on Grandpa's face. Because we trusted you, he said. Because we thought you'd do right by your son. The table was dead silent. My cousins looked anywhere but at me. Even Riley kept his head down now. My aunt looked uncomfortable, and my uncle. He slowly leaned back in his chair, lips pressed tight. I sat back down, not because I wanted to stay, but because my legs were shaking. How much was in it? I asked, looking at Grandpa. He hesitated. About $40,000 by the time you turned 18, probably more. We kept adding to it. $40,000. $40,000. That could have wiped out every loan I had. Covered books, housing, maybe even let me breathe for once. I stared at my parents. My mom looked like she might cry, but I didn't care. My dad looked angry, but not ashamed, just cornered. We did what we had to do, he muttered. No, I said, my voice low. You did what was convenient for you. Grandma finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. We need to talk about this, all of us. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was already pulling out my phone, my fingers moving almost on instinct. Not to make a scene, not to post some angry rant, just to pull up something I'd been sitting on for a while. Something I'd kept buried, figuring it wasn't worth sharing until now. And as I opened the document I'd been holding on to for months, the one with every cent I'd scraped together, every scholarship I'd fought for, and a little bonus I'd gotten from the startup I'd interned at over the summer, I saw my dad glance at the screen and freeze. He knew what it was, or at least what it meant. But I wasn't ready to say it out loud. Not yet. Because the truth? That was just the beginning. I didn't sleep that night. After the dinner ended in a messy, silent exodus, with Grandma quietly ushering everyone toward dessert, like sugar might patch the cracks in our family. I packed my things and drove back to my college apartment in Boulder early. I left a note for Grandpa, thanking him for dinner and for telling me the truth, even if he didn't mean to. The silence in my car on the drive back was louder than anything said at the table. I kept thinking about Riley's face when he whispered, "You didn't know?" The innocence of it. The sheer weight that sentence carried without even trying. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about trust, about my entire childhood being edited, revised, and narrated by two people who saw me as a resource, not a son. That document I'd pulled up? It was a breakdown of everything I'd earned and saved since I turned 18. Scholarships, stipends, job wages, freelance gigs, anything I could hustle. I had been so proud of it, too. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment at 2 a.m. once, calculating whether I could afford a new pair of shoes or if that money was better spent on groceries. I chose ramen and used duct tape on the soles. My parents apparently chose braces for my brother, and that bonus from the startup.
What they didn't know was that I wasn't just an intern anymore. 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, the company offered me a full-time position after graduation. High salary, signing bonus, stock options. They told me they were grooming me for leadership within 2 years if I kept up my pace. I'd been waiting to tell my parents when I got home, waiting for a moment when I thought they'd be proud. Now I wasn't sure I wanted them to know at all. The next few days were quiet, too quiet. I didn't hear from my parents. Not a call, not a text. Grandma messaged me once, just a simple "thinking of you, love you." I stared at it for a while before typing, "Thanks, I'm okay," and then deleting it. I didn't respond. I didn't know how. But then the messages started coming. First, from my mom. "Ethan, we should talk. Can we please meet before you go back?" Then my dad. "You're being immature. This is more complicated than you think. Call me." Then, oddly, from my uncle. "Hey, just want you to know I had no idea about the fun stuff. That's messed up. I'm here if you want to talk." I didn't reply to any of them. Not yet. Instead, I did something that made my hands shake. I contacted the bank, listed on the trust fund documentation Grandpa had mentioned. It took a bit of digging, a few forwarded emails from Grandma once she realized how serious I was, and a polite but firm phone call with a confused advisor who couldn't understand how the beneficiary of a fund didn't know it existed. When they confirmed that the fund had been drained over the course of 7 years and that every withdrawal had been authorized by my parents, I felt sick. There it was. Paper trail, hard numbers, names. They didn't even try to hide it. I asked if there was anything I could do. The advisor paused before saying, "You'll want to speak to a lawyer. This might fall under misappropriation, especially if the fund was designated specifically for your education." So I did. I made an appointment with a campus legal aid rep, brought them everything. The fund documentation, the bank statements, my own financial history, even printed out emails from Grandpa over the years mentioning adding something extra for your future that I'd always brushed off as vague birthday stuff. The rep looked at me for a long time and said, "Ethan, they might have committed a felony." I didn't want to believe it. Still didn't. These were my parents. They tucked me in. They taught me to ride a bike. They bought me a Lego set after my tonsil surgery. And now they were people I might have to take to court. That weekend, I went radio silent. Didn't answer calls, didn't post online. I needed space, needed time to think. But the silence only made them louder. On Sunday night, there was a knock at my apartment door. I opened it to find my dad standing there. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept either. "Can I come in?" I didn't move. "I just want to talk." Still, I said nothing. Then he sighed. "Fine, I'll talk. You listen." He stood awkwardly in the hallway, hands in his coat pockets. "We didn't mean for it to go this far. We just thought we'd pay it back. You were young. You wouldn't notice. Then we fell behind and things got away from us." I stared at him. "You could have told me." "I know," he said, "but your mother thought you'd resent us. She wanted to wait until we could replenish it." "You had 18 years, I said. He flinched. Then he said something that shifted everything. "We didn't just use it on ourselves, Ethan. We used it on your brother, too. His school, his surgery. He's struggling, you know. He's always needed more help than you. You've always managed. We thought you could handle it." I felt the anger rise again. So because I was the low-maintenance kid, I got less. He didn't answer, just looked down at his shoes.
Then I asked, "What would you have done if Grandpa hadn't said anything? Kept lying? Let me drown in debt?" He looked up, and for a moment, I swear I saw regret. Real, painful regret. I don't know. There it was. The most honest thing he'd said to me in years. I nodded slowly, then stepped back and closed the door. No yelling, no drama, just quiet. But something in me snapped into place after that. I wasn't just going to move on. I couldn't. They made a choice. Now it was my turn. I didn't sleep that night either. After I closed the door in his face, I leaned against it for a long time, listening to his footsteps retreat down the hallway. I expected to feel some kind of satisfaction, some weight lifted off my chest, but I didn't. My stomach churned. Not with doubt, no, I was sure of what they did, but with grief. The kind that crawls in when you finally see your parents not as guardians, but as deeply flawed people who chose themselves over you. The next morning, I got a text from my mom. Just 4 words. "We're so sorry." I didn't reply. I went to class, pretended to take notes, pretended to listen. But my mind kept playing the same loop, my dad's voice saying, "You've always managed." Like my independence was a punishment. Like doing okay meant I didn't deserve help. That night, I sat down with my laptop and started drafting something. Not an email, not a letter, a formal legal request. The campus legal advisor had already walked me through the steps. If the trust fund was set up in my name and intended specifically for my education, my parents could be liable for misappropriation, especially if they used the money for non-educational purposes. The lawyer had used the word restitution a few times. I hadn't asked what the consequences might be yet. I wasn't ready to hear it, but I was ready to start the process. So I did. I filed the request through the proper channels and CC'd the bank's trust department and my advisor. I didn't even tell Grandpa yet. I wasn't sure how he'd take it. He still believed in family. I wasn't sure I did anymore. 2 days later, I got a call. Blocked number. I usually don't answer those, but something told me I should. It was my mom. "Ethan," she said, breathless like she'd been crying. "Please don't do this. We'll pay it back. We'll figure it out. You don't have to ruin everything." Her voice cracked on the word ruin. I didn't say anything at first. Then I asked, "How much did you take?" She hesitated. We didn't keep track. It was over the years." "The bank did," I said, flatly. Silence. Then, "We didn't think it would matter this much. You got scholarships. You're doing fine." That word again. Fine. I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I stayed calm. "I've been eating canned soup for 3 years, Mom. I've walked 2 miles in the rain because I couldn't afford a bus pass. You left me to figure it out while pretending nothing existed. And you want me to be grateful I managed?" "We were trying to help the family," she whispered. "No, you were trying to survive, and you chose who mattered more." Click. I hung up. I didn't even realize my hands were shaking until I saw the cursor blinking on my screen again. Over the next week, word spread. I don't know how, but someone told Grandpa. Maybe it was my aunt. Maybe Riley overheard something. I don't know. But that Sunday, I got a call from him. "Ethan," he said, voice low and steady. "Can we meet for coffee? Just you and me." I agreed. We met at this quiet diner near my school in Boulder. He was already sitting at a booth when I arrived, stirring a cup of black coffee like it held all the answers. He looked up at me and didn't smile.
"I'm sorry," he said. "You didn't do anything," I replied. "No," he said. "But I trusted people who did. And I should have checked. I should have made sure." I sat down slowly. "I looked into the trust," he continued. "It's gone. Every cent. And I've already spoken to the bank. They're cooperating. If you want to pursue charges, well, you have every right." I didn't say anything. "I also found out something else," he added.
When your dad asked me to set the fund in his and your mother's name, he said it was for convenience, that it would be safer that way, easier to manage. I believed him. He looked at me, eyes full of something I hadn't seen in years. Shame. I should have known better. We sat in silence for a moment. Then I said, "They kept it a secret for over a decade, and the only reason I found out was because you said something without knowing." He nodded. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope, placed it on the table between us. "I can't undo what they did, but this is yours." I stared at the envelope. Didn't touch it. He sighed. "It's not enough to cover everything, but it's a start. And I want you to know I'm changing my will. Everything I leave behind will go into a separate trust only for you and your future. No one else touches it. Not again." I looked at him. Really looked at him. I believed him. I think that's what hurt most. That he believed in me and they didn't. When I finally opened the envelope that night, it was a cashier's check for $10,000. I should have felt relief, but all I felt was anger. $10,000 meant something. It meant someone believed I was worth it. My own parents never did. The next day, I filed a formal complaint with the family trust's legal department. And then I started planning something I never thought I'd have the nerve to do because winter break was coming and we always hosted Christmas at our house. Christmas came fast, too fast. It was the first time I truly dreaded going home. Not in that joking, "Ugh, can't wait for Aunt Karen's casserole" kind of way, but in the deep, bone-heavy sense of walking into enemy territory. I didn't even pack much, just a single overnight bag. No gifts, no cards, nothing wrapped in cheerful paper or tied with a bow. I wasn't in the mood for pretending. I had already told Grandpa I'd be coming. He didn't try to talk me out of it, just said, "You sure you're ready?" I was, not because I had forgiven anything, but because some things needed to be said face to face. The air was sharp and cold when I pulled into the driveway in Denver. Snow still clung to the edges of the lawn, and the house looked exactly the same. Warm, glowing, festive. If you didn't know better, you'd think it was the perfect family home. But I did know better. The moment I stepped through the door, I was greeted by the smell of cinnamon and roasted meat. Christmas music played softly in the background. My mom was in the kitchen laughing too loudly with my aunt. My dad sat on the couch with a glass of something dark, chatting with my uncle like nothing had happened. They both froze when they saw me. My mom's face stiffened. My dad didn't even stand. I didn't bother with small talk. Just nodded, took off my coat, and walked straight to the dining room where the rest of the family was gathered. Grandpa was already there. He gave me a small nod. Beside him was Grandma, who hadn't looked me in the eye since Thanksgiving. My brother sat at the far end of the table, still glued to his phone. He didn't acknowledge me at all. Dinner was served. It was tense. Everyone acted like they were walking on ice, trying not to be the first one to slip. Conversation stayed surface level, weather, traffic, work. No one mentioned the trust. No one mentioned the legal complaint I had filed. They probably thought I wouldn't go through with it, that I'd cool off,
that I'd be the good kid again. But I wasn't here to be good. I was here for closure. The moment came after dessert. My dad stood up to give his usual Christmas toast. He raised his glass, gave the standard spiel about family, love, and resilience. Then he said it. We're just so proud of how far our kids have come. Even in tough times, we've always stuck together. And that was the final spark. I stood up before he could sit back down. You've always stuck together, I repeated. Right. Except when it came to being honest.
Except when it came to me. Silence fell. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder, neatly printed, bound, with labeled sections. I set it on the table. That's the full breakdown, I said calmly. Of the trust fund you drained, every withdrawal, every date, every cent, cross-referenced with my student loan statements, just in case anyone here still thinks I'm overreacting. My mom's face crumpled. My dad's jaw clenched. I looked at Grandpa. You asked me if I was sure I was ready. I am. Then I turned to the rest of the table. I worked 3 jobs through college. I skipped meals. I missed out on experiences because I thought we didn't have money. I blamed myself. I thought I was just unlucky. Meanwhile, my parents were quietly spending the fund my grandparents created for my future on themselves. My brother looked up at that. It wasn't all on them, he said. Some of it was for me. Yeah, I said, locking eyes with him. Braces, private tutoring, new laptop every year, while I was repairing mine with duct tape. Grandma spoke up, her voice cracking. We didn't know, Ethan. We're so sorry. I nodded once. I believe you, but this isn't just about money. It's about respect, about trust, and about choices. I turned to my parents. You could have told me the truth at any point, even after the fund was gone. But you didn't. You let me believe we were all struggling together when really, you just let me struggle alone. My mom whispered, We thought we were doing what was best. For who? I asked. For me? Or for the version of me that didn't ask questions? They didn't answer. I took a breath. I filed a formal complaint with the bank. Legal proceedings are in motion. I'm not doing this to hurt you. I'm doing this because actions have consequences and because I'm done carrying this burden alone. My dad stood up slowly. You're suing us? Your own parents? No, I said. I'm holding you accountable. He scoffed. You'd really tear this family apart over some money? And that was it. No, I said. You did that the moment you decided I didn't matter as much. I picked up the folder and walked to the living room. Everyone stayed frozen at the table. I took out one final envelope, my Christmas gift, set it on the mantle. Then I turned to the room. I won't be staying tonight. I don't know when, if ever, I'll come back. But that envelope has copies of the legal documentation in case anyone wants to see for themselves, and a letter explaining everything just so no one can say they didn't know. My mom was crying now. My dad just stared at the wall. Grandpa stood up and walked over to me. You don't have to do this alone, he said quietly. You have more family than you think. I nodded. I know, thank you. He hugged me, the only one who did. Then I walked out of the house, into the snow-covered night. No one followed me. A week later, I got a letter from the bank confirming the investigation had begun. If fraud or misappropriation could be proven, and all signs pointed that way, my parents might be required to repay the full amount or face civil penalties. I didn't celebrate. It didn't feel like a win,
just a necessary reckoning. But what I did do, finally, was pay off part of my student loan. With the check Grandpa had given me, I transferred the rest to a new account under my name only. I graduated the following spring with honors, got my first paycheck from the startup 2 months later, moved into a new apartment in Boulder, bought myself a decent pair of shoes, no duct tape. As for my parents, I don't know. We haven't spoken since Christmas, but sometimes I catch myself thinking about that night. The moment my grandpa said, "Glad you're enjoying the college fund," the way everything cracked open from there. And I realize it wasn't the loss of money that hurt the most. It was the loss of belief. The realization that the people who were supposed to protect me didn't.
But I'm still standing. And I finally know what I'm worth, not because of a trust fund, but because I stopped trusting the wrong people and started trusting myself.